This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Boo. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson along with Michael Remis. And a big game tonight as the Jets play their first home game in what seems like forever. Although, unfortunately, it will be only in front of 250 lucky Winnipeg Jets fans that were fortunate enough to get the opportunity to buy tickets to the game tonight. But they are in for a treat, a huge game for Winnipeg, taking on the Florida Panthers, who've been one of the top teams in the National Hockey League all season long. We'll have lots to talk about today with the Winnipeg Jets. The man himself, the Scooch, Joe Pascucci, longtime sports anchor here in Winnipeg on Global, is going to join us at 1:20. If you're not following, I believe it's Pascucci015 on Twitter. What are you waiting for? Joe has the most incredible vault of old highlights and footage from Jets 1.0 era that I'm pretty sure exists. And it seems, especially on the weekend, I mean, he was cranking up like old crazy fights between the Jets and the Bruins, highlights from old games against the Pittsburgh Penguins. But he's also all over the Jets on a day-to-day basis right now. So we'll have some fun, maybe ask him a few things about the good old days. But we'll focus in on this team tonight that absolutely needs to put together some wins. But they've got a tough test tonight. The Jets are a home underdog tonight. We'll hit the Coolbet Lines a little bit later on and get to all of that. And, later on, after Scooch joins us, we'll talk a little bit more about the Jets and get into the Jets under Dave Lowry, under Paul Maurice, with Jack Han, who does some really interesting work evaluating systems, coaching strategies, how different teams play differently. So, for some of us that might not understand the game at the highest level of coaching, hopefully Jack can educate us a little bit on that. And then speaking of coaching, in the second hour of the program, we're going to catch up with the Winnipeg Ice, and head coach James Patrick will jump on the program. This is the team. They're just out like gangbusters, top team in the Western Hockey League. And then, like so many other things around here, pretty much shut down. Now, they have played a few games out west over the course of January, but they've had a ton of games postponed. So they're looking forward to getting back onto more of a regular schedule. But we'll talk about what this time has meant for the club, what the challenge is going forward with all the games that need to be replayed, as well as talk about some incredible individual performances, including a young goaltender that officially has become the goalie with the greatest start to a career in WHL history, not losing a game in regulation in his first 22 starts. So all of that coming up on the program. A big shout out to all of our sponsors that make this happen every day here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Vita Health. I'll actually tell you about the customer appreciation event coming up at Vita Health on Friday. We'll do that in a little bit. F Apparel, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course our friends over at Coolbet Canada. Let's get Remis in here to get things going. What up, Reem? How are you?
Feeling good. I'm ready for some home Jets action tonight. I do have a friend who won tickets to the game.
Oh, yeah?
And he knew someone else who was going. And he said the guy that he knew who was going to was going to be wearing a Winnie the Pooh costume. Because, there's 250 people in stands, so why not, I guess? So, like, I don't know if you're going. Like, do you wear a costume or bring like some ridiculous sign, like free Oleg or something to get on TV?
A free Oleg sign.
Yeah, and sorry, I was gonna say free Villy, but I think free Oleg is funnier, and that's an inside joke. We have inside jokes here at Winnipeg Sports Talk, so very exciting. Ryan Friesen also one of those inside jokes as well to everyone who comes out every day. But it'll be an interesting scene tonight in Winnipeg at the Canada Life Center. 250 people.
Yeah,
and I'll be at the game Thursday. I'm looking forward to that experience.
Oh, right on, right on. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have, let's just hope that this is just these two games.
Yes.
I mean, I would have to think that the way, and again, I don't want to assume anything because I think it's been quite clear that gets you nowhere right now when it comes to this virus. But where we're at right now with the decreasing number of cases, all the hospitals are still pretty full. You hope we could at least get to a 50% situation for all these games in February. But again, not up to us. We'll just we'll deal with it as it comes. But we're hoping that these will be the two very quiet games for the Winnipeg Jets, and at least we'll be able to get to a crowd of 50% coming up next month. All that being said, though, Remis, this is a huge game for the Jets. We've kind of mentioned where they are right now. This schedule is going to get real tough when it comes to the amount of games. They've got some murderous road trips, including a time where they'll be playing these Florida Panthers we'll see tonight, the New York Rangers, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And, listen, there was a lot of points left on the table earlier in the season. We talked about the Vejmelka game here in Buffalo. And, when you look at a road trip that just finished up with 4 games and simply only 2 points, that's not going to cut it. And, I know it's been a long time since they've been playing at home. They've traditionally been a pretty good home team. They could do themselves a big favor with a strong performance tonight. And they're going to need a strong performance tonight if they expect to get one up on a team that's beaten just about everybody in the National Hockey League, except the Panthers are coming off a loss to the Seattle Kraken in their last game. So I imagine they won't want to be losing 2 in a row. Should be a great matchup tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Jets coming off that road trip, 2 out of 8 possible points. Not ideal. I mean, you look at their standings in the Central Division. I'm just going by points percentage, and they're 6th in the Central for points percentage. And for all the high expectations we had coming into the season, we know that, you and I were high on them to make the playoffs. The projection systems were high. I don't think that they've played to where we think they can. Now, I thought they played great Sunday. We want to see more efforts like that, and the results will come. So, big measuring stick game, litmus test, all that. I think it's going to be that going forward every night. You got to have to bring it if they want to make the playoffs. And I know someone asked me yesterday, what's the temperature among the chat and people when it comes to the Jets? I was like, I don't know. People are starting to get worried, man, that playoffs are kind of falling out of reach here just a little bit. And every game, very important. Maybe, I know there's going to be no fans, but 2 games at home will be nice. And you hope they have some home ice advantage. And when I say no fans, I know 250 fans, but like basically none.
If you're going to the game tonight, bring a loudspeaker, maybe some sort of a noise-making device, maybe some signs, strobe lights. I don't know. But listen, the people that are there will be doing their best to support the club, I'm sure. But it's up to the guys in the lineup right now to get the job done. And, the way that the trip ended, it sort of started in the same way that it ended, Remis. I mean, a relatively good game. You get to overtime against a really good team. You come out of it with only 1. You feel a little disappointed, but it's not as bad as a regulation loss. But then you lose in reg to the Predators. You lose in reg to the Boston Bruins. And, you're just trying to salvage 3 points out of 8. And then to have a 2-0 lead disintegrate in 9 seconds was real disappointing, especially when you consider all of the chances that the Winnipeg Jets had to get one past Tristan Jarry. So the fact that they are where they are right now, Connor Hellebuyck said it best after the game. I mean, there needs to be a real sense of urgency right now for the Winnipeg Jets because if they can't start stringing some wins together, improving that points percentage, making the most of these games they have to play, we'll be talking about a team that needs an incredible run in the final 20-25 games to actually qualify for the playoffs. And it's fascinating what that does to Kevin Cheveldayoff's decision-making, going to the trade deadline. I mean, I can tell you that at the beginning of the year, this team was not thinking about the deadline and selling assets or trading a player like Andrew Kopp. And I mean, I said, some people said, oh, he's got an expiring contract, you trade him. The Jets are planning on doing something this year, being a playoff team and needing Andrew Kopp for that playoff run. But if all of a sudden it doesn't seem like they're going to be a playoff team, I think that significantly changes the plans of the general manager. And certainly we're not there yet. But the bottom line is, beginning tonight, even as a home underdog against a very good Florida Panthers team, this Winnipeg Jets team needs to get going in the right direction, and that starts with win number 1. But what a test this evening coming to Canada Life Center.
Yeah, the trade deadline coming up, I think, is going to be very interesting because if you're kind of caught in the middle, like close enough to a playoff spot where you can think you can do it, but not low enough, you want to sell, or you're a sure seller. I think that's a problem. I mean, they're going to make some tough decisions there. I mean, if if the losing continues and you fall out, then yeah, pretty easy to be okay. We're going to trade Andrew Kopp, unless you think you can re-sign him or Paul Stastny as well. Those are probably the two biggest UFAs. So I'm again real intriguing as for what's about to happen here with the team. But yeah, it starts tonight here, Florida. 2 home games, and then we'll see how it goes going forward.
Let's get to a number of, sort of paper moves today by the club. But the one bit of news coming out of the morning skate was the announcement from the Jets PR team that Dominic Toninato has ended up on the COVID-19 list, along with Winnipeg Jets assistant coach Charlie Huddy. So, assuming that now, Rennie had tweeted out that yesterday was a false positive and he's waiting for another test. So I guess Toninato could be a player. And we'll try and get the audio from Coach Dave Lowry on that maybe a little bit later on in the program if we've got time to squeeze it in. But, with Toninato out, it could be an opportunity to Svechnikov to get back in the lineup. And I'm still a little bit puzzled about what happened with Svech. I mean, he was injured. He missed the game. He came back in, played under 4 minutes, the least of any Jet forward. And I think the most logical explanation was maybe he had, flared up something. They never really tell us what these injuries are to begin with. But there may have been an issue on what he was dealing with. And that's what, made him play as few minutes as he did and then miss the next game. But Dave Lowry was pretty clear that, he was the one guy that was available over those 2 games back-to-back in Boston and Pittsburgh and didn't play right now. So it would be a big opportunity for Svechnikov to get back in. I said before when we saw that it was going to be, Toninato, Vesalainen, and Svechnikov that, I remember that game that they played coming out of the Christmas break, January 2nd in Vegas, where Evgeny Svechnikov was the first star of the game, scored a goal. The fourth line played more than maybe any game this season. And we were really hoping that, they could maybe duplicate that again. But bottom line is that looks like it's going to really be the one change up front. And Remo, no changes on the back end. Dylan DeMello and Logan Stanley are still out for the time being. And I know a lot of people, myself, thought maybe this was a perfect spot to get Billy Heinola in. He could probably use his puck management and the way he thinks the game against a team like Florida. Doesn't seem like that's the way the coaching staff feels, and it looks like Bo is back in along with Dylan Samberg tonight.
Yeah, DeMello, coach said day to day, and Logan Stanley is more than day to day. So we are going with, I guess we can bring up, I'll bring up the Jets lines real quick. Got a real nice graphic made on our Facebook page. Give us a follow there on Facebook if you haven't. Trying to get to 1,000 likes. We're real close. So link is in the description of the video down below.
What a great YouTuber.
Yeah, I'm a YouTuber. I love that YouTube. Hit that subscribe and thumbs up. Do that too as I point to it. It's right there. Okay. Here are the lines. Connor, Dubois, Perfetti, Kopp, Scheifele, Wheeler, Stastny, Lowry, Poganski, Vesalainen, Harkin, Svechnikov, and I guess if Toninato's test turns out actually was a negative, then Svechnikov would likely come out. Morrissey, Schmidt, Dylan Pionk, Samberg, Beaulieu, Hellebuck. Starting again, you have to think, Comrie would get the start. I think this is 21 straight games started by Hellebuck. Now they had a couple breaks in there, so it's not like he's starting 3 weeks every second night. or whatever, or sorry, like 2 months, whatever, 21 games, how long that takes to play. But I think at some point, I mean, this guy needs to take a rest here. Goalies just don't play that much anymore. So I think this is the lineup. Sandberg, I think he's played well. Beaulieu, I'm kind of curious if we do see a Heinola swap for him, but if he comes in, starts throwing the body around, chucking knucks, blocking shots, I mean, he definitely impacted last game. I don't think you can argue with that.
It's funny. Earl says Scheif and Wheels on second line must be +1 tomorrow. Well, it is a +1.
This
tomorrow.
Was Ken Weeb had it in this order, so take it up with Ken.
Well, no, everyone, that's right. Read the room. I mean, just look at what happened last game. Look at the ice time. Look at how much Dave Lowry's been lean. Listen, Kyle Connor is the driver right now and the most effective offensive player, the most dangerous offensive player on the Winnipeg Jets. And Kyle Connor is getting the ice time that, afforded to a player like that. He's playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois has been, I really like Dubois' game for the most part over the course of the road trip. I thought he was playing as hard and as tough as any of the players, making, life miserable for opposing defenses and at times goaltenders. Cole Perfetti's riding with those guys and is acquitting himself quite well. You'd love to maybe see a little bit more production. It still is early though. And that's been the line that the coach has been leaning on right now. So, Dubois had 4 more minutes than Mark Scheifele. Connor, I think, had about 7 more minutes. So, again, these are just, I think, the media or people numbering the lines as they see them. But if your number one line is the line that plays the most, that gets that most opportunity, right now it's Connor, Dubois, Perfetti, Scheifele, Wheeler, Kopp. And as I said, Remo, for Wheeler to come back after all that time off playing those 2 back-to-back games, I really thought he looked good. But they're going to need more from that line. They're going to definitely need more from the bottom 6. And in Connor Hellebuck, who looks to start tonight against the Florida Panthers, he's been very good at times. But certainly there's been a few pucks that have got by him, and then a few self-inflicted mishaps like the second goal against Pittsburgh that you just can't have right now. I think everyone on this team from top to bottom of the lineup is going to have to bring their A game this evening if they want to hang with and hopefully beat the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, and that was a big topic actually at the skate today. I think it was Jeff Hamilton asking a couple guys like Adam Lowry, like, hey, what's going on with the bottom 6, not contributing a whole lot offensively? How important is that? And you do need contributions. And I thought Jeff also mentioned something interesting the other day. It seems like it's either, the Connor line is the one scoring goals, or, the other line where the Scheifele line is scoring goals, assuming they're on opposite lines. I know they played together for the start of the year, but it's never like the top 2 lines are rolling really hard and playing at their best in the same game. And I think that has been an issue. And of course, playing, it's cliche, but playing a full 60, as we saw, you had with the 9 seconds the other day. But I think we'll see a lot of the same stuff. I think you're catching Florida at a good time at the end of a road trip. I think that's 4-6 for them. But the Jets also had a bit of a grinder there on the road, and it is the first game back at home from a road trip. But I think they've wanted to play at home for a while. Maybe they'll have a boost from the sparse crowd that's going to be there. I am interested to see it. One thing that's crazy to me, Huss, looking at the stats for tonight, Sergei Bobrovsky. This guy's been absolutely incredible for Florida. I guess that's what happens. You have Spencer Knight coming, breathing down your neck. Bobrovsky, I guess he remembered how to play at an all-star level. Because let me pull up his stats real quick, but they were impressive.
Well, it's a huge bounce back from last year when, frankly, he sucked. You had Chris Drieger from Manitoba pushing him for time in the net. And when you got one guy that's getting paid $10 million and another guy that's making $750, and the $750,000 guy is the one getting the starts, you realize something's up. And then, of course, bringing in Spencer Knight meant that, it was probably going to be Chris Drieger. They would have loved to find a taker for Bob, but at $10 million a season, that just wasn't going to be the case.
So last year, Huss, or last 2 years, 2 years ago, 900 save percentage. Last year, 906. This year, it's up to 923 and a 244 goals against average. This is going back to, turning back the clock here to 27-18 in Columbus, those type numbers, maybe even slightly better than that, especially when it comes to save percentage. So this is the Bob Huss that they were paying for. And then again, the last 2 years, the first 2 in Florida, it did not go well. I don't know if it was an adjustment or, he's just enjoying collecting his big check and didn't want to put in the effort. But all jokes aside, a real nice bounce back season here for Bob. And shocking to me that the two best teams in the NHL are the Florida teams.
Yeah, they have been great. The Carolina Hurricanes have been great. That road trip, the old Southeast Division, is a murderer's row right now in the National Hockey League. But we get a chance to see the Panthers for the first time this season. And as we mentioned, be a very sparse crowd tonight. Hopefully that changes coming up. Hey, before we bring in Joe Pascucci to focus in a little bit more on the Jets, certainly want to ask him about some Bombers talk as well. We do have the Canadian men's Olympic team. That was, we thought it was probably going to be, well, we knew it was going to be announced today, Reem. Yesterday, there was a leak of what we thought was going to be, but now it's official. And a few familiar faces. Former Jet Eric O'Dell, we believe, is going to be part of the club. And former Jet farmhand Eddie Pasquale, part of the goaltending tandem, along with Devin Levi, who we saw in the World Juniors a couple of years ago. Other noteworthy players, last year's #1 overall pick, Owen Power, and Mason McTavish, who was the 3rd overall pick of the Anaheim Ducks. And I'm still not too sure how it got arranged for him to play, because he did start the season playing in the National Hockey League. But there he is, playing along with Ray Ferraro's son, Landon Ferraro, as well, Remo, and Josh Hosang getting a chance to put on the red and white in Beijing.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued for this Team Canada lineup. I loved the last one. Who do we have? Derek Roy, one of my favorite late fantasy picks. He was on the squad. And yeah, I think Eric O'Dell was in there too. So, played for the Jets. Eddie Pasquale, as you mentioned, he played for the Ice Caps. Eric Stahl, Stanley Cup champion, gold medal. I love to see him on the roster too. Big Stahl guy right here. So I'm excited for the roster. Mason McTavish, that's interesting. Him and Owen Power. You got some young talent too. So a bit of a diverse group, and it's going to be an interesting tournament. I think we all fell in love with Germany, who almost upset Russia in the gold medal game in the last Olympics. I mean, we're all, of course, disappointed it's not going to be a quote best on best, but I think when it's a Canada and hockey, I think there's going to be some intrigue, especially if people, you haven't seen a lot of Owen Power. We didn't get to see that at the World Jays, or we did for that one game or the 2 games.
For a guy that said that he wasn't signing with the Buffalo Sabres because school was very important to him and he wanted to have a full season of school. Like, has Owen Power even been in class at Michigan at any point this season? I mean, he was gone for the entire month for the World Juniors.
Hey,
that finished
remote
up.
Learning. Come on,
Yeah,
remote learning.
You're right. It could be remote learning. I guess that maybe could have been done from Buffalo as well. But anyways, he's, a phenomenal young player. He'll be there. Jason Demers is a former NHLer. Mark Barberio getting in the mix as well. And then a couple of other familiar names in David Desharnais, former Hab, and Adam Cracknell, Daniel Winnick as well, rounding out the Olympic team. Listen, it's great for these guys that have the opportunity to play for Canada. But, man, I still, just announcing these names, thinking how much time this year, Remo, we spent talking about the best on best tournament. Man, it is disappointing that this is going to be it. That being said, these are guys that will be representing Canada, so I know the whole country will be behind them.
Yeah, hopefully they win gold. And the games, I think it's going to be like, what they're supposed to be like midnight or 1 a.m. or something silly. When they came out with the schedule, we were all excited to stay up late. I think there's one like a midnight game and like a 7 a.m. game. There's also a 3 a.m. game. So, we'll see how it goes. I'm curious how the tournament will be received. We have some like surprise people, and will we even pay attention? Like, how is the scheduling of the Olympics going to work when there's NHL games going on? Like, will we just be overshadowed by the Jets? So,
well, you know what? That's a great question. The games are all going to be in the middle of the night. Remo, let me ask you, do we have Joe in here right now? I'm not seeing.
I think Joe's in there. He's having some issues with the video, but Joe, is he in there?
Because when I interesting. When you came in at the beginning of the program, we could see you. I'm not sure if you changed something on your settings. I'll tell you what, Joe. Why don't you just pop out and can just come back in, and if we don't get the video going, we don't get the video going. No big deal. But just try it again, and whatever you did the first time, I could see you, so that might be a good thing. And while we do that with Joe, I will give a big thanks to our friends at F Apparel for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, custom suits for men, locally owned, down at 190 Smith Street. The guys at F Apparel have a full line of custom clothing for any occasions, specializing in suits, but also dress shirts, winter jackets, casual chinos, golf pants, untucked dress shirts, shoes, ties, accessories, and so much more. Hey, every guy needs at least one suit that fits and looks great. And F's custom suits made, they starting at just $400. They're the top choice in Winnipeg for wedding and grad suits. If you have a big event coming up and you need to look great, F is there for you. Wedding parties, by the way, 15% off when your group buys their suits from us. Give Andrew and the gang a call at F Apparel. Make an appointment online at EPHFapparel.com or go see him at 190 Smith Street downtown. Of course, it's been a huge January over at Vita Health Fresh Market. They've got all those great products for a sober January. And as more and more people try vegan diets, they've got it all there. Tofurkey, Field Roast, Gardein, The Very Good Butchers, Light Life, and more. But if you haven't been to Vita Health, you know what might be a great time to do it? This Friday, because they've got their Customer Appreciation Day on Friday, January 28th. Save 10% on just about everything in the store, with just few exceptions. So whether you want to try those Sober Carpenter non-alcoholic beers, whether you want to get into maybe a little bit of a vegan diet, maybe you just want to go and pick up those amazing salads and sandwiches at the Vita Health Fresh Market Grab and Go Deli. It's all there. And you can also join their exclusive Vita VIP list for more special offers all year long by texting Vita VIP to 1-877-630-1970. Vita Health's got 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, online at myvita.ca. And of course, our friends at Culligan Water have been the go-to people for water services in Winnipeg for over 65 years. Family owned and servicing Winnipeg and southern Manitoba the entire time. They are the leaders in all things water when it comes to drinking systems and services. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, drinking water systems, citywide delivery services is just the start, not to mention commercial and industrial water products and solutions. If you have any needs when it comes to water, start with Culligan. You can give them a call at 204-694-5180. They're over at 1200 Sargent, or hit them up online at drinkculligan.com. All right, well, let's get into this. I do believe we've got Joe Pascucci with us, although I'm not sure what's up with the camera. Not the biggest deal, though. I know Remis will get a great photo or great shot of you, maybe a shot from the video. But Joe, welcome to the program. What's going on and how are you?
Well, Hustler, they always said I had a face for radio, so this is perfect then. Everything is good right now except for trying to get this technology to work, and something so simple is proving to be very difficult. Well, something like the Jets this year, right? Something so simple as getting the puck out of your zone. Brendan Dillon, you've got Andrew Kopp along the boards. Nobody is checking him, but you decide to pass to Mark Scheifele, who has a man on him, and guess what? Goes from 2-0 to 2-1 because you made a pass you shouldn't have made.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that play. I mean, overall, the Jets have had some real good moments. I think, certainly their roster, the personnel that Kevin Cheveldayoff has put together, I think is better than they had on the squad last year. And yet we're still in this middling part of frankly, not even middling anymore. Now on the outside looking in, as Remis laid out, Joe, they're just, if you want to go to points percentage, because there's a lot of games to be made up, they're 6th in the Central Division. And if you're 6th in your division, you're not making the playoffs. Even if you're in a really strong division, I think we'd all agree the Central is a lot more difficult than the Pacific right now. But at minimum, you got to be in 5th place, and that's just to get the second wild card. Overall, what did you make of the road trip? Because At times I thought they played well. I think they certainly played hard. It was a tough schedule, although they'd been off for a long time over it. But a few mistakes here and there, some puck management issues that continue to plague the club. And, they come back with 2 of a possible 8 points that with the predicament they're in just simply isn't going to cut it.
Exactly. And unfortunately, this goes all the way back to the beginning of the season in that first road trip and those 2 games in California where they kind of put in a so-so kind of performance. And then they go into Minnesota, they look really good, but then they blow that lead, which has become sort of a theme for this season, blowing leads. So, they play well in spurts. But, right now this season, 2-0 lead for the Winnipeg Jets is the worst thing that could ever happen to them, because I don't have the stats, but I just recall so many games where they're up by 2 goals and you just know the other team's coming back. You just know that the Jets just can't hang on, which is incredible because you go back to, I guess, the 2017-18 season when they were protecting those 1-goal leads. And they won so many games down the stretch protecting a 1-goal lead. But this team, even though, as you just said, there's much better talent on this team defensively and, from the last couple of seasons. But it's just not getting the job done. And I shouldn't put all the blame on the defense. I put a lot of the blame actually on the offensive players who don't always back check, who don't do one basic thing like look over your shoulder to see who's coming, because it seems that I watch a lot of games and I always see the trailer from the other team just coming into the zone and no one has picked them up. And this just continues to go on. There's a long litany I could go into about the Jets. When they get on an odd man rush, the player with the puck is going to pass. So does the opposing goaltender. So does everybody else. The player with the puck rarely shoots. Why? Dave Lowry talked about it today, about it getting shots on goal. And he also mentioned about stopping in front of the net. How many times have Jet players just sort of done a flyby, at the other end in front of the opposing goaltender? They don't screen the goaltender. They don't get to the net. I really do put most of the blame on the forwards for not doing their job defensively more than I do for the defense not doing their job. Though I did single out Brendan Dillon for that play on the 2-1 goal, which I'm still confused about.
Joe, let me ask you this, because while we're talking about the forwards, I loved you had a couple real heaters on the old Twitter machine on the weekend, really more in the Boston game. But let's talk about Mark Scheifele. You watched his entire career. He is,
yes.
I don't want to call him an enigma because he's proven at times he can be right up there with some of the top players in the league. And we think back to the Jets' greatest playoff success was driven by Mark Scheifele, who scored 14 goals in 17 games. But I don't think there's any doubt that, really from about midway point of that last season, of the season after 2018, so the 2019 season, something was a mess with the team. And like the second half of that year and the early exit of the playoffs was incredibly disappointing. I thought that he came back at times last year and was playing really well. I loved what he was able to do, rising to the occasion in the playoff series against the Edmonton Oilers. But there has been many times this year where we've sort of been left wanting, certainly in the defensive end, but more so with just the how dialed in he is to the game at times. And, it's no surprise right now. You look at the ice time last game. That number 1 line now under Dave Lowry sure as heck seems to be Pierre-Luc Dubois in the middle with Kyle Connor. And right now, Cole Perfetti's on that wing. What do you make of Scheifele and just where he's at right now with this club?
I think with Mark, there's been a sense of entitlement that's been afforded to him by the organization. I'm going to blame Paul Maurice a little bit for this, because Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, and I'll stick with Mark for the moment, were the go-to guys for this team. They're out there on every power play, out there in the overtime 3-on-3, out first 2 guys taking the shots. the last couple of years, that has changed. But there was a sense of entitlement, and I can remember back to the overtime situation where the Jets were losing games because Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler would not come off the ice in overtime. They'd be gassed, but they'd get the puck and they'd still try to score. Of course, they didn't, and they had nothing left in the tank, and the other team would come back down the ice and score. And this went on and on and on, and it was like, why isn't Paul Maurice doing anything? And finally he did. But it just seems that it does. If Mark Scheifele makes a defensive mistake, it's the coach looks the other way. And he doesn't, all he has to be is just a little tougher, checking his man, and he sort of uses the stick 90% of the time, and the other 10% of the time he just sort of skates by his man. So I don't know what's gone on defensively, but he doesn't have to do much to improve his game defensively. He just has to put in a little effort, and is that asking too much of one of your leaders, is to put in a little effort? Now, you didn't ask me about Blake, but I mean, I'm not as down on Blake Wheeler as most of Jets Nation is. Yes, he's struggling. Yes, he hasn't gone off to this greatest start, but this team does better, way better, when Blake Wheeler is contributing, when Blake Wheeler is the leader of the team. And you look back to right from the get-go when the Jets arrived. I mean, I looked at it early. This team will only go as far as Blake Wheeler can take them. And you look at the power play right now. What's missing on the power play? They need a leader out there running the power play. And Blake Wheeler is that guy who can quarterback a power play. His only deficiency right now is the fact that he doesn't score off the half wall like he used to. So that takes one of the options. But Blake Wheeler, they need him to pick this team up and to get them back on track. But I don't know what I'm not there anymore in Winnipeg. I don't know what his voice, if it, commands anything in the dressing room anymore. But Blake Wheeler to me, is the guy that can lead the Jets out of this funk.
Yeah, I mean, listen, no one's in the dressing room anymore, so it doesn't really matter where you are following the club. But I certainly think that Blake Wheeler's voice is still the voice in that dressing room, and I think he does lead by example each and every day. I don't think there's anyone that would ever question, the work ethic and what he brings. And it was a hot topic in that, he was struggling at the beginning of the year. It was plainly obvious for everyone to see, but to his credit, he worked through it. And Joe, I mean, going into his injury, he'd had 10 points in 5 games. He was being really productive. He looked like that guy that we'd seen in the past. It's not realistic to think that he's going to be cranking at a 91-point pace each and every year to the end of this contract. And sometimes when you pay guys for incredible service to a club as unrestricted free agents, I mean, you realize that, that the back end of that contract might not quite be the value that you have of some of your younger players, and the Jets were willing to make that deal with him. And sometimes I think, especially in this market, people hold that against him. That being said, I was impressed with Wheeler on the weekend. I mean, to come back in off of that break, and I don't want to say he just picked up right where he left off, but if we thought that it was going to be a slow process to get him back up to speed, it didn't seem that way, especially in the Pittsburgh game. And listen, Wheeler was far from the only guy that maybe didn't have enough finish against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Sunday. I mean, for crying out loud, Kyle Connor could have had 4 or 5 goals alone in that game. But I thought it was, I thought it was encouraging to see the way Blake Wheeler came. And to be honest, I think it's important for Mark Scheifele, because as long as Mark Scheifele's not playing with Kyle Connor right now and going with a combination of Andrew Kopp, Nikolai Ehlers is out until the middle of February at the earliest. These are the guys that they're going to battle with right now.
Yes.
And hopefully Wheeler can, do something to, maybe, as we say, the thing is, Scheifele's still getting points. I mean, he's still in there, but I think we go back to the Winnipeg Jets. The potential of this Winnipeg Jets team is at one place with Mark Scheifele sort of playing as engaged as he's been at times this year. And it is in a whole nother category and weight class if there's a way they can get Mark Scheifele back to being that guy playing at his best game in and game out. And that just hasn't been. We'll see glimpses and brilliant games and then others that will fall off. And
well, it would help if he took a shot or two, you know. You watch the Jets power play, with the exception of the last game, and it's a pass to Scheifele, pass back to the point, pass it over to Kyle, pass back to the point, pass over to Scheifele, pass back to the point, pass back to Scheifele, and he's tired of passing it back to the point, then tries that cross-ice pass through about 3 or 4 players, and it doesn't work, and it's shot down the end. Take a shot. Even Dave Lowry said that, I think, this afternoon. They got to shoot, and they got to get to the net. Like, can you not do that? That's, that's what didn't happen in the Boston game. Nobody went to the net. That changed in the Pittsburgh game. But, like, how often do you have to beat a dead horse? Get to the net, take a shot on goal, crash, and knock in the rebound. It's, there's nothing, scientific about it. It's old school hockey. And right now, stop trying to score pretty goals. Score some grungy goals. Score. That would. Well,
that's what Dave Lowry's been saying since the day he took over the job. Let's talk about the coaching for him, because I know you mentioned, Paul Maurice. He'd been here for so long, and there was sort of a way that things were done. I think most people would agree that there certainly was a bit of a class system within that dressing room. Just what are your thoughts on the challenges of Dave Lowry coming from already being a part of the staff to a team? And I know it's a bit of a weird situation with his son Adam on the squad, but let's just take that out for a minute. But coming in to take over a guy that had been the voice and the leader for 8 years mid-season, and what have you seen different at all from the team since Paul Maurice stepped down?
A little bit different. I still think it's the same voice in the dressing room. I haven't seen too many changes. Like, I know under Paul Maurice this season, they were dumping the puck in more. That was the change that I noticed. And instead of trying to make that, pass at the blue lines that got turned over and ended up in their net, they were dumping it in more. That to me has changed in the last little while. They're now trying to carry it over. He does seem more willing to, take players from line 2 down the line 4, or line 4 up to line 3 or 2. I like the fact that he's going with, giving the guys who are going in the game more ice time. I do like to see that. Look good down the weekend there with Dubois and Scheifele and Wheeler on occasion. I thought they looked really well when he had to put them together, because Kyle Connor had just been killing a penalty, which in that Pittsburgh game seemed to be a lot of penalties against the Jets. But overall, I don't know if I've seen too many differences in the way that he's coaching, because it doesn't seem like the team has played overall vastly different under Dave Lowry than Paul Maurice, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's
Joe Pascucci's with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We're getting ready for the Jets to begin a quick 2-game homestand tonight against the Florida Panthers. Thursday night will be the Vancouver Canucks coming to Canada Life Center with a limited crowd of just 250 fans. Joe, I do want to hit Bombers with you, but just before we transition from the Jets over to the Grey Cup champs, it's an interesting situation right now. Dylan DeMello's out. Logan Stanley is out. Billy Hanel was always thought to be the guy, and it really seemed like he was the guy that was the next man up of the AHLers. He goes on the COVID list. Dylan Samberg comes in, plays very well, stays in the lineup, and now we're getting back-to-back games in Nathan Beaulieu. Any thoughts on Billy Hanel's situation with the Winnipeg Jets? I, for one, thought that might change, actually, once Paul Maurice was gone and Dave Lowry took over, but it's been a little bit puzzling that we haven't seen him yet get a chance in the NHL this season, especially over the last week with the amount of games that they played and the injuries on the blue line.
Yeah, it is confusing, frustrating, because we look back to when he did play in his rookie, that first year, and how well he played. And then in the 1 or 2 games that he got into the lineup what last season, and again how well he played, and how they just don't seem to want to find room for him in their lineup, because right now Dylan Sandberg's not coming out, even when in my view, even when the other players come back and are healthy again and come off COVID or come off their injuries. How do you take him out of your lineup? He's big, he's strong, he doesn't seem to make too many mistakes when he's out there. He's a keeper. So what are you going to do? And Ville Heinola, I mean, we saw what he could do, and for some reason they just don't want to put him in the lineup. I mean, I've heard Kenley, from Sportsnet and Kenny and Rennie, talk about there may be some things in his contract, or they have to put a player on waivers to get him into the lineup, something like that. I'm not 100% sure about why the situation is, but he should be playing. If he's healthy, he should be playing. But Nathan Beaulieu, I compare him to Tim Waters, the whole of the
terrible
the
Timmy
1.0
Waters.
Jets.
There's
Tim
a blast
Waters,
from the past, Dave.
Yeah, he wasn't the best Jets defenseman, but he gave you every ounce that he had in every game, and I see that from Nathan Beaulieu. He gives you everything he has, right? And I think that there's a lot of respect amongst his teammates for Nathan. Remember when Luke Cunnin, when he played for the Wild, took out Brian Little in an exhibition game, gave him a concussion that the NHL, conveniently ignored. And then Beaulieu came into a game against the Wild later in the season and basically extracted revenge, and got the helmet after the game, the pilot helmet after the game for what he had done. And I remember Blake Wheeler saying, we all stick together, So I think there's a lot of respect for Nathan Beaulieu. And yeah, he may make a mistake or two, but he gives you everything he's got. He doesn't cheat the game, and I do like his toughness. And I think I'd like to see more toughness on the Jets blue line. I'd like to see more toughness from the Jets forwards as well.
Yeah, well, and it would be nice to get a little bit more scoring from that bottom six as well. Joe Pascucci's with us. Scooch, this has been so much fun. People have been loving you in the chat room. Hey, before we go, you covered this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team for a long time. We knew how dry it was for a long time when it came to champagne sales here in Manitoba. Just, from afar, what do you make of the job, starting with Wade Miller, but Kyle Walters, Mike O'Shea has done to turn the Bombers into the envy of the rest of the Canadian Football League, and now looking to give themselves a great chance at doing something that no team's done since the 80s, and that's win 3 straight Grey Cups.
And the Bombers in their history have never won 3 straight Grey Cups. So this would be a unique opportunity for the organization, to put 3 in a row, and then you get part of that discussion of a dynasty, like the Eskimos dynasty and those Alouette teams of the 90s and into the end of the 2000s. So I think that you got to give credit to everyone in that organization: Danny McManus, Ted Govea. I never think I pronounce his name right. And obviously Wade for, picking up the pieces after the Joe Mack shambles. And, it was a struggle. I must admit I was not on the Mike O'Shea bandwagon after the first 2 seasons because the team struggled, and I think he struggled a bit as a head coach. But, adding the defensive coordinators, Richie Hall and then Paul LaPolice, I think that's a contribution that should not be ignored by those two, and what they did to solidify this Bomber organization and make it what it is today. But everybody from top to bottom, and Kyle Walters, with all these signings of players, Michael Shea for the atmosphere that he has developed within the organization. And it's just fabulous. It's just fabulous to watch. And, and I wait in anticipation of what they're going to do this season, and go for, 3 Grey Cups in a row. I can't say 3 years in a row because it would be 3 and 4 years because they've missed 1 season.
Yeah, many would say they got gypped out of, would be going for a 4-peat right now. But, you just mentioned the signings. I mean, the amount of time that you covered the Bombers and what they had to do to get free agents to decide, okay, well, I'll come to Winnipeg.
No, I won't.
You know what? It just is amazing to hear. I mean, players like Adam Big Hill and a number of other guys, Stanley Bryant, forego free agency to stay here in Winnipeg with the Jets. Joe, this was awesome. We're going to have to do this again real soon. Thanks so much for your time.
And next time, I promise with video.
Right on. Folks, if you're not following already, it's at Pascucci015. As I mentioned, he has the greatest vault of old Winnipeg Jets footage back from the 80s. Make sure you give him a follow, and doesn't mind mixing in a few heaters on Twitter during hockey games as well. Always fun. All right, we're going to have a great conversation coming up with Jack Han. I'm really looking forward to this. Before we do that, guess what? Winnipeg, winter, January, got another extreme cold warning. Don't get caught on the side of the road calling your buddy for a boost. Go to Manitoba Battery, get set up with Donnie and the gang. They'll listen, if you just want to get your battery tested to make sure that you're going to last the winter, they'll do that for you free of charge. If you need a battery, you'll get it at the best price in town, starting at $94.50 with Core Exchange. They've also got delivery services citywide if you are stuck at home and need to do the job yourself. But you can always head down to 1026 Logan Avenue and get started up with Manitoba Battery. Of course, guys, we've got tons of sleds right now, or tons of snow right now. People going out on the sleds. If you do need sled battery, they've got all makes and models, usually between about $65 and $75. Bottom line is, for whatever you need, Manitoba Battery's got you covered. The Battery Kings of Winnipeg, locally owned at 1026 Logan Avenue, and you can find them online at manitobabattery.com. Well, folks, and then there were 4 in the National Football League playoffs. We might touch again on that a little bit later on today. But if you're a Niner fan, a Ram fan, a Bengals fan, or a Chiefs fan, and you figure you might need to add to the collection to rep your team on Championship Sunday, Royal Sports is the place to do it. While you're there, checking out all the great NFL merchandise. Of course, they got Major League Baseball, NBA, all the Grey Cup Championship gear for your Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and thousands upon thousands of items of Winnipeg Jets merchandise, including many, many exclusives. So head on down to Royal Sports, check out their $1 million hockey selection, the snowboards, all the cool stuff over on King's Skate, Snow, and Surfside, and give them a follow at Royal Sports Pembina on Instagram for all the latest merchandise drops and deals over at Royal Sports. And with the new year here, I know many of you, maybe not because of the new year, just because your car is giving you a headache right now dealing with this winter, might be thinking about a new whip. And if you are in the market for new wheels, before you do anything, pop down to Knott Auto Corp at Waverly and McGillivray. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? They've got tons of incredible vehicles, including SUVs and Teslas on the lot. But their experts can also help source and find the perfect vehicle for you if they don't have it right now. Start online. Visit them online at knott.ca or pop down and see them, along with the new Winnipeg Car Lab, which is fully up and running over at Waverly and McGillivray. All right. This is going to be a great conversation. I believe we spoke with Jack at some point back in our old home at 1290, but this is the first time we're going to bring Jack Han into Winnipeg Sports Talk. Jack, of course, is a former AHL coach and NHL analyst with the Toronto Maple Leafs. You should definitely give him a follow on Twitter at JHanHockey. That's JHANHKY, who tweets a lot about tactics and player development. And when you think about all that we've been talking with Paul Maurice's change over to Dave Lowry, as well as, many topics about player development, I think Jack is a perfect guest to have coming up on the program. But Ice fans, be sure to stay tuned. We will have Ice head coach James Patrick join us a little bit later on. Remo, did we lose Jack?
I think he's there. Just he's in a place with bad reception. I think you might be able to hear him now. But Jack, if you want me to phone you, just DM me. Actually, I have your number from before, so if that's easier, I can always give you a call.
Jack, can you hear us? Okay.
Okay, I'll call him. He gave me his phone
Remo,
number.
why don't you do that? We'll get Jack up on the horn and ask him. He's actually got a really interesting project that's coming out. It's an ebook where he's going to be going over the systems of every NHL team with 7 pages per team of how they play at 5-on-5, as well as how to implement their scheme. So, I mean, we'll focus a little bit more on the Winnipeg Jets, but we'll also find out about the project overall. Well, while we're waiting to get Jack on, let's just take a quick look at all the games in the National Hockey League tonight, because it is a pretty busy game, a busy night, I should say. Battle of the Titans out east in Ottawa. The 13-21 Sabres are going at it with the 12-20 Ottawa Senators. The Dallas Stars, who've sort of been running through, I described it today on the Lock Shop as the JV tour of the National Hockey League. They just handed the Flyers their 12th straight loss. They got a win over Buffalo. They got one on I believe it was the Sens, and now they get the New Jersey Devils in tonight's game. So Dallas is sort of right of the ship and taking advantage of some of their, shall we say, of some of the weaker competition in the National Hockey League. And that's what you got to do. You stack those points and move on. Speaking of bottom dwellers, the Coyotes are a massive, massive underdog against the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. We'll get to that, some of these numbers in the Coolbet Lines. We do have the Vegas Golden Knights coming off their win last night. They're back at it tonight against the 27-9 Carolina Hurricanes. We've also got the Florida Panthers are here in Winnipeg, of course. The Flyers are just incredible. I mean, look, they have lost 12 consecutive hockey games right now. Mike Yeo will be the coach for the remainder of the year. It doesn't look like that change from Alain Vigneault to Mike Yeo has really produced the desired response in Philadelphia. I think it might be time to blow that one up. Panthers and Jets here, as we mentioned. Later on tonight, the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks will drop the puck at 9 p.m. and another 9 p.m. game. The Seattle Kraken just got one up on the Florida Panthers and beat them in regulation a couple nights ago. Would be nice if they could do the Jets and everyone else in the Central Division a bit of a favor, taking out the Nashville Predators tonight. So that is the full slate of games in the National Hockey League. We did make some picks today on the Lock Shop. If you're listening on the podcast right now, or with us live on YouTube, just go to your favorite podcast feed, search Lock Shop, or you can go over to my Twitter feed at Hustlerama or Dustin Nielsen's. The full video of the show from today is up. And yes, there was a bit of a victory lap for going 4-0 against the spread. The two of us so far in the playoffs are a combined 17-3 against the spread. So it's a great time to be with us on the Lock Shop, and shout out to everyone that jumped on that partner parlay as well. Hey, Jack, it's Andrew over at Winnipeg Sports Talk. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you guys great. Can you guys hear me?
Perfect. We can hear. We figured this would be a little bit easier to do just with some of the reception problems we were having. You know, I've kind of laid out your background and what you're into. And why don't you, first things off, tell us about this project that you're working on the playbook for 2022. We'll focus in on the Jets particularly, but for hockey fans, how did the idea come up, and what have you guys come up with?
So, as you may have already mentioned, I worked for 3 years in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, both at the NHL level and also as an assistant coach at the AHL level. And part of my job as an assistant coach was to pre-scout all of our opponents and really break down whether it's how they forecheck, how they break the puck out, how they play in D-zone coverage, what kind of offensive plays they like to run. And I figured it's the kind of thing that a lot of fans have asked me about over the years. And I thought it'd be just a really good idea to lay it out there and really illustrate the NHL team system. So all 32 teams, you have them side by side so that when you watch the game, you understand what's going on a far deeper level.
You know, Jack, well, let me ask you more of a broad question, but, you know, from your standpoint, when you're, you know, trying to find out about a club, what they'll bring to the table, you know, as an opposing coach, What are the first things that you look at when you're looking at game tape? What are the most important things, and what stands out to you immediately when you dive into the video of somebody that you are scouting when it comes to systems and how they play?
So this is something that maybe not, I would say, not every coach at the pro level really, I would say, fully appreciate, but especially at the NHL level, you know, your team is going to be driven by your best players. So if you have an elite forward or a defenseman or a goalie, it changes a lot of the patterns in the game because they're going to find ways to make plays that other players normally couldn't execute, right? So, you know, there's a part that's all about playing in structure and playing as a 5-man unit. But ultimately, if you're looking at the NHL, the better teams also have those game-breaking players that kind of, they'll throw something different at you. And if you ignore those players, then you do it at your own perils. Even though you might have the structure part down, if you don't account for the other team's most talented players, certainly then you're missing a big chunk of what's going on.
All right, Jack. It's been a weird season here in Winnipeg. We've had such continuity from a coaching perspective with Paul Maurice being here for the last 8 years. And, you know, there've been a lot of talk about maybe we were at the end of the road with the coach. Certainly he felt it, stepped down in mid-December. I'm not sure how much you've had a chance to watch the Jets pre and post Paul Maurice, but I'll ask you maybe to go back. I mean, what stood out to you about the Paul Maurice Winnipeg Jets? And, you know, now that we're in the new year with the new head coach, have you seen much different between the Winnipeg Jets under Dave Lowry as opposed to their old head coach?
So just to preface my comments, like I've coached against, Winnipeg's AHL affiliate. I've watched a lot of the Jets over the years. I haven't watched as much since Dave Lowry took over, but certainly, you know, from the games I have seen, there's not a whole lot of change, I would say. It's the idea behind what they're doing is pretty similar. And the one thing that I would say about the Jets is they're a very dangerous team off the rush. Their forwards, they carry the puck quite a bit. Their forwards really drive their offense. And the one thing that always stuck out to me is their defensemen aren't as involved in the play as a lot of the other teams in the league. So if you're thinking about the teams that really possess the puck and really play well off the rush, whether it's Florida or Colorado or, even Anaheim now is getting better, Vegas, those teams, they have their Ds jump into the play much more, whereas Winnipeg, the Jets have their Ds kind of staying back and being, more of a defensive conscience and letting the forwards do more of the job, which, is something that you can look at. Certainly the Jets have a good group of forwards, but in terms of opportunities to improve, I think that would be the biggest area for me.
Now, when that happens, is that more just a decision on the coaching staff that the personnel is best fit to that sort of style? Or do you think if there were different players, you play differently? I mean, how much of that is about personnel? And I realize that's sort of a general question.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly Winnipeg for the past, 5, 6, 7 years, they've been known for their big guns up front, whether it's Shifley or Wheeler or Kyle Connor or Nick Ehlers. And certainly, as a coach, you're always making these trade-offs, and it's certainly not a bad idea to try to get these forwards to have the puck as much as possible and for them to, go in on breakaways or 2-on-1s or 3-on-2s. So you may ask your Ds to really stretch the ice and go for these long breakout passes. So I can see it from that point of view. And then, on the flip side, Winnipeg over the years, they've lost Bufflin, Enstrom, Tyler Myers, all guys that can play pretty well with the puck. And now you're left with a group of players who are maybe a little bit more simple. So from that point of view, I understand it. But then, over the years, you've had other players who grow up playing this kind of very offensive game from the back end, guys like Sami Niku or Ville Heinola, like they have a harder time stepping into the lineup because now you're asking them to kind of tone down their natural instincts. And for a young player, it's not always easy to do. And a lot of times it's kind of by making those aggressive reads that they're able to defend well also. And, like especially in Niku's case, who, didn't work out at all in Winnipeg. I think sometimes playing in this very conservative way with your Ds, maybe it makes you miss out on some players.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I did want to ask you about sort of the player development aspect from Winnipeg. And of course, with your time in the American Hockey League, you're familiar with these prospects. But Ville Heinola, the former first rounder of the Winnipeg Jets, is a constant topic around here in that, the Jets figured that they needed to get better on the blue line. They added Brendan Dillon. They added Nate Schmidt. They added $10 million to the cap in the offseason. And in a lot of ways, Jack, what that did was, kind of put a bit of a glass ceiling going into training camp for a number of the prospects that thought that they'd be able to maybe crack the lineup. Now, due to injuries and COVID, Dylan Samberg got a chance to play a couple weeks ago, played very well, and has stayed in the lineup. And yet now with a couple other injuries, Ville Heinola is still on the taxi squad. And, for instance, tonight, Nate Beaulieu, who, has been an extra player, has been in the press box quite a bit, is out there playing with Dylan Samberg tonight. I guess just your thoughts on Heinola in particular as a player, his readiness right now to come in, and what do you make of the situation where, a number of veteran players, continue to play, and, this young man who, by all accounts, seems very ready, has been continuing to excelling in the American Hockey League, has a tough time coming in and showing what he can do at that NHL level, at least this season.
I mean, I like a lot of the things that he brings to a game, the way he skates, the way he moves the puck. And the challenging thing is when you are an undersized D like he is, a lot of times coaches put emphasis on, how you play in the defensive zone and how you're able to use your stick to break up plays and things like that. And essentially, if you're a smaller guy who relies on his skating and his movement and his offensive instincts, the best way for you to play defense is to defend up ice, right? By pinching or by extending ozone cycles or by, killing rushes early as opposed to backing up and then try to make a stop in your D zone. And the way that I think Heinola and others, they naturally like to play defense, and the way that they're taught how to play defense in whether it's Finland or Sweden or, other places, it's not really compatible, I would say, with how the Jets play for the most part. Because if you're a Winnipeg Jets defenseman, you're going to back out of the zone early to take on the rush, to prevent odd-man rushes. And then once you're in D zone, you're going to look to pressure the puck man on man and try to separate the puck from your opponent. But if you're a smaller guy, it might not necessarily be the best way for you to do it. So, I work with a lot of individual players now, whereas before I was more on the team side, but it's always tricky to kind of, play the kind of structure that your coach demand, but also express your own individuality, but also kind of play to your own strength. So it's kind of, I appreciate how difficult of a spot that is for the player and for the team. And, another example, like if you look at a team like Florida, they have a lot of players who, especially in the back end, they skate really well, they attack off the rush really well, and they have trouble defending in zone. And the way that they defend reflects that. Whereas if you put those players in another system, they're not going to do as well.
Jack Hand's with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. From a player perspective, Jack, one of the things that we've heard, and it's not unique to this market. We've been talking about player development, and especially for a team like the Jets that has drafted so well, about how they nurture their players. It seems like the strategy here is they'd rather be a player be too ready than not ready enough. As someone that's been on both sides of the organization with the NHL, analyzing and coaching in the American Hockey League, what's the risk reward in your mind? And let's focus on the defense position right now of young defensemen coming up, being more than ready, or maybe getting a shot to play a little earlier than, if all things were perfect, then they would get into the lineup.
Yeah, it's a really tricky thing for defensemen because, my experience kind of working on both the NHL and AHL side is certainly a forward, you can do a lot better job of sheltering or putting them in better spots, whether it's, using more offensive deployments, having them play, maybe a little bit less at 5-on-5 and more on the power play. So a player, let's say like Cole Perfetti, you can hide that player a little bit better. Whereas for Heinola, like even if you give him the most favorable or the easiest minutes possible, he's still gonna, have a few shifts a game against the McKinnons or the McDavids of the world, and that's really where I think a lot of times, as a coach, you get a little bit nervous. But at the same time, I think as a player, like you kind of sense that, and that makes you tentative as well. So, I think a lot of times, like as a defenseman, you really want that player to be mature in the way that like they know that the way that they like to play. And even if they have 1 or 2 or 3 bad shifts, they're going to stick with that. Whereas if you promoted, especially a defenseman, but if you promote that player too early, then you play him maybe 8, 9, 10 minutes a game, they have 2 bad shifts in a row. And all of a sudden, mentally it's hard for them to kind of stay on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great description, and something that I think all organizations struggle with. And at some point, you don't have any choice, and they're the next man up, and you get in, and it's sort of a sink or swim. But I do understand organizationally wanting to, put your players in the best chance to succeed. And I think overall, the Jets have done a pretty good job of that. It's just such a unique situation right now in Winnipeg with the players they've added as well as the guys they've committed to, Jack. You've got 5 of your top 6 defensemen, veteran players with veteran contracts that are signed for 3 more years. A young player in Logan Stanley that sort of established himself as a regular last year. And then all these top defense prospects in Dylan Sandberg and Ville Heinola, Johnny Kovacevic. We got a chance to see Declan Chisholm, who was never in the mix to probably get a call-up, play against the Detroit Red Wings and look phenomenal in his first game before going back to the Manitoba Moose. And it does create somewhat of a real organizational challenge to do what's best for the team, but also do what's best for these young players because they are the future of your organization.
So let's talk about Chisholm for a second, because he's a player that I've watched quite a bit over the years because he played his junior in Peterborough, right? And when I was with the Leafs, we had both Nick Robertson and Simeon Daragachensev playing in Peterborough. So I got to see a lot of Chisholm because he played a ton at 5-on-5. He played on the first power play, and he was a player that really I thought was interesting because his whole game is he's in on the rush, he's pinching, he's getting up ice, he's involved. So as a D, to stick with that game in the NHL, it's a big mental challenge because you almost have to kind of have this fearless or even kind of careless mentality. So it'll be interesting for him because, he's doing really well in the AHL right now, and, he's had a taste, and, so now the question becomes like, does he stick with his game, the one that got him here, or does he try to tone it down and, maybe it works out or maybe it doesn't. So he's going to be a big question mark for me, but, just the way that he plays, I think he's the kind of player that Winnipeg could really use. And if the Jets let him play that way, like he'll be a good player.
Jack, when it comes, we've already seen a number of coaching changes happen, including the one here in Winnipeg. And the one in Winnipeg was a little different because you were going from a head coach to a guy that was already part of the coaching staff. And, something that Paul Maurice had said, he just really believed that they needed a different voice. Other coaching changes are different, where they certainly like Bruce Boudreau going in Vancouver. It was a full clean out of the coaching staff. Bruce got to go in, and it was the Bruce way right from the get-go. How challenging is it to make a significant impact in a mid-season coaching change in your mind? And how much of it is just having a different guy in the room and a different message? And how much of it is the coach actually coming up and executing different strategies on the ice?
So certainly it's a mix of both, because if you're talking about the NHL, generally speaking, there's a coaching change because the team is underperforming. And I would argue that in Winnipeg, it's a bit of an exception just because, it was Paul Maurice opting to step aside, as opposed to, let's say, in Vancouver, where there really was a change because of the team not playing up to his ability. So I think if you're changing the head coach, naturally you're going to have this rebound effect because maybe the games leading up to it, the team was a little bit unlucky, they didn't get the breaks, and they couldn't get any standing points. So you're going to naturally see this bit of a bounce back. But to the second part of your question, it is very important to have a different voice, just because for me, a huge part of what coaching hockey is, it's not just about the structure or the X's and O's. It's about how people respond to mistakes or how people respond to things that are out of their control. And just having a fresh face or a different voice or someone who, hasn't been on your case for the past 6 or 12 or 18 months, that's going to allow players to maybe play a little bit more freely.
Jack, this has been an awesome conversation. I can tell you, everyone's really been enjoying it in the chat room. Just before we go, we've sort of been talking about this project, Hockey Tactics 2022, the playbook. I know the pre-sale is on right now. Just to let people know exactly what it is and how they can get on it and get it in their hands as soon as it's ready for publication.
Yeah, so it's going to be released soon. I would say within a week or so. It's going to be an ebook that's going to be about 40 pages long. And basically you have the diagrams of how every single NHL team plays their system. So whether it's in the D zone, in the neutral zone, in the offensive zone, I've watched a ton of clips. I've broken down what you need to watch out for. So whether you're a hockey parent, a hockey player, a hockey coach, or just a really diehard fan, if you're looking to watch the game in a smarter way and understand more about what's going on, that's going to be the best resource I think money can buy. And, speaking of money, if you get it on pre-sale, it's only $16 US. Once the product is released, it's going to double to $32 US. And the best way to get it is you can go on Google and search Hockey Tactics 2022, the playbook, and then you're going to be able to buy it on gumroad.com.
That's great. For everyone watching on YouTube, I know Remis has got a link out there for it. I mean, incredible deal. It's 50 cents a team. This is, if it's anything like this conversation, Jack, I think a lot of people will be really looking forward to getting it. Listen, all the best with the finalization of it and getting it out to the masses, and can't wait to get our hands on it. And hopefully we can do this again soon, coming up in the next few months.
All right. Thank you. Well, best of luck to the Jets this season, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, big one tonight. Florida Panthers in town. Should be great. Jack, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it. Give him a follow on Twitter.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Good stuff, Jack. It's Jhan, JHANHKY hockey. You can go there, find out more about the playbook and about Jack. Really appreciate him joining us. Well, we're going to go from little NHL coaching talk to talk with the coach of the WHL's Winnipeg Ice. Before we do that, well, listen, you're probably not going to the game tonight, but if you do want to kick back with a couple cold beers without leaving the house to watch the game, we'll just hit up our friends at Little Brown Jug, who are continuing to offer free delivery citywide for the month of January. You can get those delicious 1919s. You can get the anniversary Brute IPA, or you can pick up the great taste of 4 different Little Brown Jug beers with the winter variety pack. It's all available with delivery citywide right now for free at littlebrownjug.ca, or pop down and see them at the tap room on William Avenue. Maybe grab a pint while you're there, and everything else will be ready to go. Scotty's gets going next week. Carrie Anerson, Tracy Fleury, Mackenzie Zacharias, a lot of Manitoba content. We'll be all over it here on Winnipeg Sports Talk with our Princess Auto curling reports. Of course, Princess Auto is the place where you'll find the best deals and the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Nationally headquartered right here and family owned, 2 locations in Winnipeg, but you can get those ideas going and shop 24/7, 365 online at princessauto.com. And with only $2.50 allowed in the building tonight, might be a great night to pop over to your local Boston Pizza. A couple ice cold schooners, Boston's famous wings, some gourmet pizzas, and the Jets game on the big screen with the big sound. Although it is pretty crummy outside right now weather-wise, maybe you want to stay in. You can get the great taste of BP delivered hot and ready to your door. Call your local Boston Pizza or check out the menu, their game day deals, and more online, and order at bostonpizza.com. All right. What a wild and weird season it's been for the Winnipeg Ice. I mean, just steamrolling the rest of the Western Hockey League for the better part of the first few months of the year. And now, well, let's just say that games have been few and far in between, quite similar to the Winnipeg Jets home season. Let's check in on the ice right now and welcome in the head coach of the Ice from the Ice Cave, James Patrick. James, what's up? Thanks so much for doing this. It's great to have you on the program. Reem, we got a mute on that?
No, I'm not sure what the issue is.
Yeah, there might be a...
I got to switch his microphone. Hold on.
There we go, Reem. We'll just get that switched and we should be good to go. This was set up by Munns, so we blame Munns if of course we have a hard time hearing it. James, give us a 1-2. Can you
hear me now?
Perfect. We are good to go. Hey, thanks for joining the program. What a weird season. I mean, it's been a great season on the ice for the most part. I guess the problem is you just haven't been on the ice enough, well, at least in game situations. I'm sure everyone's sick of practicing right now. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, it's but you know what? It's been the same for most of our league. You see most of the NHL. It's been every team's gone through it with over the last two months for sure. It seems like every team gets shut down for 2 weeks. Just for us, since Christmas, it's been we play a week, then we get shut down for 10 days. We play a couple games, then shut down for a week. So it's been some false starts and then just precautionary stoppages. But hopefully the end is in sight.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, we came out to a bunch of games before the shutdown, including just a hell of a game between two of the top teams. Well, at the time, it was the number 1 and 2 teams in the entire Canadian Hockey League in the Edmonton Oil Kings. And, I mean, the quality of hockey right now that's being played by your club and in this league is, it's an eye-opener for a lot of people that maybe don't normally get out to the Ice Cave or haven't had the chance so far to do it. But hopefully people will take advantage of that once we get out on the other side of this and have everything going on so far. But tell us at this point, I mean, you knew you had a lot of talent on your club, but the start that you guys had and the way you guys came out of the gate, rising to the number 1 team in Canada, was that maybe a little ahead of schedule for the plan, or did things just come together and, some guys step up even beyond that maybe the expectations were when you got to camp?
Yeah, I didn't expect this in the offseason. We felt we were going to have a real good team coming out of the year before, out of the bubble. Even though we were losing Peyton Krebs, our best player, we knew we had some real good young players and a really good, veteran group. I think there's been a number of reasons. Obviously, we have a lot of depth, and so I could talk about so many different players. But our goaltending has been great. Both goalies have almost played equally, and both have played as well as we, could have imagined. And then on the back end, Carson Lambo's missed most of the year before. He went and played in Finland, played 10 games over there, came back, played basically a game in the bubble for us, and then had some health issues. And basically it was best thought that he shut down for the rest of the year. He's been, in my mind, no doubt the best defenseman in the league and plays up to 30 minutes a game. And I think that has been, maybe the strength of the team. Him and Nolan Orzak, Ben Zalotti on the back end have played real well. Couple young centers who are getting a lot of attention, Matt Savoy and Connor Geeky, because it's a draft year. They're both 17. If you would ask me in the offseason, I knew they were going to be real good players for us, but I was concerned how they would match up against the 19, 20-year-olds in the league, because it's still, this league to a large extent is driven by the 19, 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds, the guys who've been drafted, who are a little stronger and bigger and more experienced. And both guys they've played real well. And I think it's just been a bonus, because then we have the rest of our veteran forward group with his McLennan and Jake and Smallwood and now we had brought in Jack Finley and Mike Milne, and the list goes on. But I would just say we just have a lot of depth.
It's easy to get carried away talking about the forwards and the guys that are scoring all the goals. You mentioned the blue line and Carson Lambo. So great to have him back. But I have to ask you about the goaltending. I mean, Gage Alexander's been great. And Hauser, I know it was just announced yesterday. I mean, he's had the greatest start to a WHL career ever. Still has yet to lose in regulation. I mean, maybe just a couple word on your netminders, because it's easy to forget about the last line of defense when you've got talented forwards that are scoring the way they have so far this season.
Yeah, they've been so important for us. The biggest thing that they've done this year, they've made the big save at the right time. There have been games where we've been in close games and we've outchanced teams, but it's still a 1-goal game. It's an even game, and we've given up a kind of a high quality scoring chance, and they have for the most part come up with the save. I think it was around the 20 game mark, and we didn't know if either of them had given up a real bad goal. And it's going to happen over the course of the season. Every goalie does it, but if they're making the saves on the ones that they should, and then giving you a chance on the other ones, that's been huge for our success. Both of them. Gage got drafted last year. He's a 6'7", big goalie. The type of goalie that NHL teams are looking for. He's got a lot of potential. This is his third year with us. He's improved immensely, and his first breakout kind of year was the year in the bubble. But this year he's built on it, and he's been better than he was in the past. And then we drafted Daniel Hauser, 3 years ago, and first time I saw him, he was a 15-year-old. He was a small goalie with incredible speed and feet, real good skater, but his side to side with his feet is high end for a young goalie. And so he played as a 16-year-old, and he's just continued to get better. Incredibly hard worker, which a lot of young goalies don't get. You look at any NHL goalies, the work ethic, the work that NHL goalies put in now is, the bar just keeps getting raised, but it's what is expected for you to be a top end goalie and to keep getting better. And so for a young goalie, a lot of goalies at junior, they haven't experienced that yet. They don't know any better. They're naive. Daniel Hauser, his competitiveness and his work ethic it matches his skill set. So he's real excited about him.
When you've got two goalies playing like that, every guy always wants to be the number one, especially when you had so few games over this past month. I mean, is it just a great competition between these two guys that continue to push each other both in practice and in games?
I would definitely say that. At the same time, I don't want one of them to go 2 weeks without playing. I don't want. So, we have, earlier in the year, we were kind of going back and forth. And then when, if someone played so well and they deserved another start, they were getting it. And so, they both were able to get, 2, 3, 4 games in a row. But we're coming into the part of the season. We're going to, at one point, I think we play 6 games in 9 days and a lot of 4 and 5s starting in a week from now. So obviously we're going to need both of them. And, it is a healthy competition, and they're both real good teammates, and they support each other, and it's a team first mentality. So it's worked out great.
James Patrick, Winnipeg Ice head coach, is with us. The team gets back out for one quick road game, and then the meat grinder, the schedule begins when the team's back here in February at the Ice Cave. You mentioned Savoy and Geekie. I know Savoy, I believe, was in the top 5 of the last Central Scouting ranking. When you've got young players like this that are in your draft year, how does that, from a coaching standpoint, is there anything that changes? I mean, what these guys are working for. You know how important that draft year is, but it's a team game and it's about winning hockey games. I mean, is that a challenge, or do you have to have the players really buy in, knowing that what's good for the team is good for the players because of how much is put into the draft season of, young stars in this league?
Definitely, as a coach, you're very aware of it. And if anything, I want both of them to still have fun. I want them to enjoy this year of junior, because playing junior is the best time of your life. I look back, I never had more fun or a better year than when I played a year of junior in Prince Albert. It doesn't get any better than that. And everyone is in a rush to get to the next level. Everyone wants to get to the NHL. And there's plenty of time for that, number one. Number two, excuse me, both 17-year-old center icemen both needed it, I would say, at the start of the year learn how to play a 200-foot game, play both ends of the ice, play in, situations where we were protecting a lead late in the game. And they both have gotten better in those areas. I would say, and they're both unique players. Savoy is explosive and quick, darty on the small side. Geeky is a 6'5" prototypical NHL center iceman who skates well, has got a great shot, but is heavy on the puck. There's details and habits to their game that I want to change, and there are times where I feel like they got to be sick of me, harping on them, but they know, and I keep reminding them, I'm trying to make you better. I'm trying to make you a better player, and it's going to help our team. I think the best part is that we have such a great veteran group and leadership group that they respect these two players. They know how good they are to help our team get better, but they're also willing to push them, and they push them in practice, and they're right there backing up on just the little details of doing things the right way. And then both of them work hard, and they, every day we talk a lot about we're coming today and we're trying to get better. Every day we come to the rink, it's about what we can do to get better. And they both fit it. They both buy into that. They both fit into that kind of mindset.
I have a feeling in a future season, we'll be having a similar conversation about Zach Benson. I mean, I remember seeing this kid join your team in the bubble last year as a 15-year-old. And I'm like, wow, are you serious? I mean, he's not a massive player, but if you want to talk about someone not looking out of place, and then having a chance to see him in person this year. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how unexpected is it to have a kid at that age be able to come in and hang with players like we've just been I mean, this is not a run-of-the-mill hockey team. This is a very, very good team, and he's a big part of it.
He is. He's the smartest young hockey player I've coached. We had him as a 15-year-old. We thought he was going to come in and just practice with us, maybe get in 4 or 5 games over the course of the season, which was last year's 24-game season. The first day of practice, he was the best player on the ice, and he kept getting better from that point on. And by the time before we even played the first game, we just said, no, he's in our lineup. And I was a little fearful about matchups with his size as a 15-year-old, and not probably weighing about 145 pounds. You're a little worried about getting him out against the 230-pound guys on Brandon or Schneider on Brandon. Ridley Gregg plays a real physical game. And it ended up happening halfway through our first game. And he's so smart. He doesn't put himself in a position to, for someone to take advantage of him for the most part. And so from that point on, he is another kid who's gotten better. He's grown. He can play every situation. I mean, I don't use him exclusively on penalty kill. He's probably our best penalty killer. He's got a great stick. He's got great reads, really good hands. He is as good a complete all around player. How he thinks the game, how he reads the game, and so we're very excited about him. I mean, he's a big part of our team. He's on our second line already as a 16-year-old.
I could just tell by when I asked him, and the smile on your face, and you mentioned the smartest young hockey player. I mean, that's good for you. I mean, with your incredible experience both as a player and a coach, that's got to be real fun to bring a kid like that in. And as a coach, it's probably the best thing when you have a young man that goes in, you think that's just going to be practicing for a little bit, that, as you just said, is the best player on the ice the first time he goes out with his team.
Yeah, I'll just say this. He can skate, he can handle a puck, he can shoot, and an outstanding vision. Like, he's one of those players he can do everything. He's grown since he was 15. He's going to kind of be a lanky, 6-foot speedster, I think, at our level over the next year or two, and then when he gets to the next, gets to the NHL. I mean, he will be I expect him to be a first-round pick, and but right now, again, I'm more focused on what he's doing for us and how he's playing for us. But I probably had a smile on my face because he is one of those kids who's super popular. He's a hockey rink rat. He's got a mischievous side to him where he's always pulling practical jokes on guys in the dressing room. So he is a fun kid to be around. And they all are like that. This is the best part of what I get to do is hang out with, with these 16 to 20-year-olds who are fun, but they want to learn and they want to get better and they work hard. It is, I'm lucky to be able to do it.
Well, and you know what the most fun? Winning. Winning is fun, and you guys have been doing a lot of winning, and I'm sure everyone can agree on that. James Patrick's with us from the Winnipeg Ice. Well, the ultimate goal is to win the Western Hockey League and be Memorial Cup champs. A lot of work to be done. We've talked about all the hockey that's going to be played. But your GM, Matt Cockle's been busy over the course of this season. Had a number of ads. There was the Finley trade. You've had some new players come in. Just fill us a little bit in on what has been added to the lineup over the course of the last couple months with the deals have been made and how these new players have fit in with the team that was already near the top of the league.
Well, I mean, the first deal, bringing in Jack Finley, a second-round pick by Tampa Bay, a 6'5", 210-pound center iceman who has good offensive skills. I totally expect him to be in the NHL quickly. Maybe next year he'll play in Tampa's farm team, but he will be chomping at the bit to get up there. He is at our level. He's probably more offensive, but I view him in the NHL to be Adam Lowry type of player. Radek Faksa in Dallas, those a big third line center who can skate, but he can battle, he can play physical, and really good kid, really good work ethic. So we brought him in. He's going to be a shutdown center. He'll play against all the other team's best players. And then just this last week, we brought in two new players. We brought Tanner Brown on defense from Vancouver, and from Lethbridge we brought Chase Wheatcroft, a real versatile, good skating, finish your check kind of forward. And if I go back to Brown, he's just just one of those competitive defensemen. He's a guy who will block shots and battle. And I wouldn't call him an offensive defenseman. He can move the puck. He skates well, but he's probably just what we needed, because on the back end with having Lambos being the main guy, plays with this Nolan Orszak, real good skater, and then Ben Zalotti being a big point man, a big power play type of defenseman. We needed a guy who could defend and battle and play heavy minutes and play in the dirty areas, and so that's what we think we got in him, and we're real excited about all three players coming in.
I'm sure they were excited to join a team right up near the top of the league. What's the conversation between Coach Patrick and these young men when they come to the Winnipeg Ice for the first time, trying to fit into a lineup that frankly has been winning consistently throughout the year?
Well, all of them came from teams that weren't going to be in the playoffs. All were super excited. All three of them are 19-year-olds. And they all have something to play for. I mean, they're so excited to be on a team that's, got a real good look and a real good chance. Obviously Jack wants to get to that next level, and he wants to play as well as he can and keep improving. The other two are looking, can they play well enough to get a contract? Can they play well enough to be a good 20-year-old in this league? They love playing. They want to keep playing. And, we'll have a decision the following year to make who our 20-year-olds are going to be. But as far as the conversation, it's, we do talk a little bit about how we play, how our system. I might ask them, how are things where they came from? And then early when a player comes, I just want to let them play. I don't want to put pressure, stretch, or stress, or have them think too much. I want them to just go out and play their game. And just over time, I know they're going to be in our meetings, and they're going to see some individual clips, and they'll get up to speed quick enough as far as how we play the game.
James Patrick has been our guest. He's the head coach of the Winnipeg Ice, who will be back. Hopefully, we'll be able to have fans in the building by February. The next home games are Saturday and Sunday against Medicine Hat. Just a one-gamer trip out to Moose Jaw, and then back for another sort of week of practice. Just before we go, James, I've got to ask you, I know these are unprecedented times and everyone's dealing with it, but from your perspective, especially with the start, the way you guys had it and how well everything was going, what's been the most challenging part of the last month where your team's hardly played any hockey games?
You know what? I think a big part of it there, we did, like every team, we had some COVID numbers. And so then you had half a team not at the rink, half a team at a rink, for almost a week. So probably the biggest thing was not practicing together as a team, and then maybe having one or two practices, going to play a game, and having, another week off. Just getting, trying to recreate game-like situations in practice, number one. I felt, over this last month, most of the games we've played, I didn't like our starts, but I thought, geez, it takes us like 10 minutes to get back into game mode. And then, I thought we've had some good games, but there is, and I will never complain about it because every team is going through it. And I think the teams that are going to be most successful are the teams that be able to, go with the flow and adjust and not get caught up in worrying about things you can't control, and just be ready to go when your team is called.
Well, I'm sure the boys will be excited to get on the bus, even if it's just for one game, and then get back home and hopefully play in front of some fans at the Ice Cave. It's a great atmosphere, and I'll tell you what, this hockey team is definitely worth the price of admission. James, continued success when you guys get back, and hopefully survive a pretty crazy schedule for the next couple of months. We'll look forward to following you, and looking forward to having you and some of the players back as we follow the Ice, hopefully with their best season ever, because we know there's a lot of potential in that room. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Appreciate it. There he is, James Patrick, head coach of the Winnipeg Ice. You can find out more about the Ice on their website at winnipegice.ca, but make a point, the 5th and 6th of February, next time the Ice are back here in Winnipeg playing at the Ice Cave. And if you haven't been to a game yet this season, Remis and I went out to a couple earlier. There is some major talent on this squad. And certainly as we get closer to draft day, we could absolutely be talking about both Geekie and Matt Savoy being very high, like top 10, top 5 picks in the NHL draft. Big thanks to Munzie for helping us set that up. And thanks to James Patrick for taking the time for us. All right, we got to get Remis back in here. Before we do that, big shout out to Nick and Nikki, our great sponsors from the Nick and Nikki DQ group. 4 Dairy Queens to serve you and your family. One down in Niverville. And of course, Nick, very active, involved with the new MJHL franchise in Niverville. I believe they're called the Nighthawks. They're all fired up to get MJHL hockey down in that growing community. And I imagine there'll be lots of stops at the DQ in Niverville before and after those games. Of course, we've got the DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and the DQ in St. Vital on St. Anne's, which is now open year-round and is delivering on Skip the Dishes and on Uber Eats. Try out the new Buffalo Chicken Tenders. Try that the Steakhouse Burger. My personal favorite still is the Ultimate Grill Burger, one of the elites in the fast food game. And of course, I don't need to tell you about the blizzards, the novelty bars they have for you, and of course the cakes. If you've got an event coming up and you need a DQ cake, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. Get an order in. They'll get it custom made for you and have it ready to pick up at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQ locations. And our friends at Canadian Club are ready for what should be another weekend. There may have been a little CC going on the weekend, some cheersing after a certain football team won one of the greatest games of all time on Sunday night. But you can get the great taste of Canadian Club, our official sponsor, and of course the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And make sure you join us on Friday afternoon towards the end of the program live on YouTube, where we'll bring everybody in the chat room, give them a marble, fire up the marbles, and we've got some more Winnipeg Sports Talk CC hoodies ordered for prizes for the marble race. Big thanks to the gang over at Canadian Club for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. We do have to get to Coolbet Lines. We'll do that in a couple minutes before the end of the program, but let's get Remo back in here. A bit of a whirlwind today. Great stuff with Scooch. Really enjoyed the conversation with Jack Han. And tell you what, it's been a while. We've been hoping to get James Patrick on the program. Great time to do it, Remo, because my God, is this team going to be busy coming into February. But that'll be a good thing because, man, they've been a lot of fun to watch so far this season.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle battling these audio and video gremlins. We managed to get Joe on and Jack on, so I edited those out of the podcast. If you're listening on the podcast, I will be editing the spaces
Oh, nicely done.
Out, and almost had a bit of a hiccup with James. Just had to select his appropriate microphone, and we're all set. So a little behind the scenes talk on how things work here. But great insight on the Jets from Joe for sure. A lot of love in the chat, and as well from James just now. And Jack, big fan of Jack. I follow him on Twitter, Jhan Hockey. I'll have to pick up his book, Hockey Tactics 22. He actually had a book too about NHL EA Sports strategy, which I pre-ordered immediately. So,
are you serious?
Yeah, he had a book. Yeah, where he interviewed one of the top
you
players.
Didn't tell me about that before. I guess you just didn't want that getting out to everyone for all your opponents on the stream to understand the finer things about coaching tactics in NHL 22.
Yes, exactly. I needed to know all the secrets. Great, very, very interesting hockey mind, Jack. So I know a lot of people loved hearing what his takes were as well. So this has been a fun show. All first time guests. So I'm always worried first time guests that you may have some hiccups, but hey, we battled through all of it.
Yeah, well, anyways, Scooch, I mean, all of them will be back. I mean, we'll certainly love to. We'll be staying on top of the ice, and we'll get Munzie on just to shoot it with us on the program and keep us up to date. We'll have to have Kevin O back as well, who, of course, are both part of the broadcast right now for the Winnipeg Ice. And that game, by the way, is the 28th of January, Friday. They'll be out at Moose Jaw and then back for another week of practice before the 5th and 6th. Home games resuming at the Ice Cave, and by then we'll know sort of what the restrictions are as to whether they'll be able to pack some fans in the building to watch one of the top teams in the Western Hockey League. All right, we will get to the Coolbet lines in just a second. Couple of CFL/Bomber notes. I guess we'll start off with the Bombers, Remo, and this is not surprising that the Bombers have released Drew Desjardins. Young offensive lineman, huge part of the success that the team had last season. And we heard that there were upwards of 10 NFL teams that were interested in the services of Desjardins. It's been interesting to see him sort of travel all around for the last few weeks getting tryouts. And sounds like he's expected to sign with the New England Patriots. And what an opportunity for Desjardins to go from one championship organization to a team that, hasn't won in a couple years, but is led by the most decorated coach in NFL history. And as Kyle Walters said, this is sort of what you want to create with this club. You lose a few guys, but if the path to the National Football League goes through a stop in Winnipeg, picking up another ring, that's a very, very good thing. But well-deserved. We didn't, like the many offensive linemen, you don't talk about them very much. But the reason for that is that they're doing the job so well, and very exciting for the young man to get a chance in the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see. I mean, how many Bombers are getting NFL interest. DeAndre Alford before, possibly Kenny Lawler, but today it's about Drew Desjardins, who got released to pursue NFL opportunities, and Farhan reporting he's about to sign with the Patriots today, as you mentioned. So the CFL offseason ongoing, something every day, and it's been
something every day. Well, and the big story last night, of course, was the retirement of Mike Riley.
Yes.
Excuse me, Michael Riley, the artist formerly known as Mike Riley. BC Lions quarterback, was one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Did not get the results that he or the team was hoping when he went over for that big money deal, moving from Edmonton to BC. But man, Remo, I mean, with him walking away, and you look back at his career in the Canadian Football League, without a doubt, one of the best quarterbacks of this generation, a guy that's won a Grey Cup. I mean, pretty much did it all. But the CFL is lesser without having Michael Riley, and holy smokes, that's a big hole for the BC Lions, who apparently are going to go with Canadian Nathan Rourke as their starter for 2022, which is a great thing for Canadian quarterbacks. Didn't think that we'd ever see that. Not sure how they're going to fare in a very tough West Division. But first things first, a hat tip to the great career of one Mike Riley.
Yeah, I played a big fan of Michael Riley when he was at the Edmonton. I played a lot of him on fantasy. I mean, him going to Darrell Walker, Brandon Zylstra, who's now in the NFL. That was an awesome group. And then he signed the big deal with BC, and I know he got the big money, but they didn't really have an O-line to protect him. He took a lot of hits the last couple of years. I mean, he was clearly very beat up this season. And listening to Farhan's report on TSN, it sounded like he already has his, post-football life figured out, being a firefighter. And again, I think he had battled injuries, and after 11 seasons, he decided it was time. I mean, he had some great games, but we'll never forget, the first game of the year when it kind of flip-flopped on everyone who was going to be starting, and you couldn't really trust the BC depth chart. So it was that was odd, but yeah, he was a great quarterback in the CFL, and I did attend the Grey Cup here that Edmonton did win, and was sick for a week because it was so damn cold in the stadium. But I do remember that.
I see Earl in the chat. That hat, that stupid hat. I was sort of joking with the hat tip to Mike because he had a very unique sense of style that you can pretty much only get away maybe with being a quarterback in the National Football League. I wonder, will he be able to, if he's going to become a firefighter, Reem? I mean, I wonder what his sort of fits are going to be like heading to the fire hall each day for work, whether he'll still maintain the impeccable style he did as a trendsetter in the Canadian Football League, or whether it will be a new, chill, casual Michael Riley moving on to a new chapter of his life.
Yeah, great question. Always very well dressed, Michael Riley. One thing, Huss, that was breaking news. I don't know if you saw this because we're here, but Sean Payton, have you heard this one? He's apparently stepping down, Huss.
Really?
Yes.
So that's what the GFL was mentioning about this Saints press conference coming in 15 minutes. Very interesting. And I had not heard that this was happening. I did hear some scuttlebutt about it, and there was some talk about Payton actually moving into the broadcast booth. So I'm not sure whether an offer that he couldn't refuse was put forth to him. I guess we'll find out in a little bit, but that's a big blow for the New Orleans Saints, who lose a Super Bowl winning coach, a guy that has sort of been synonymous with his team throughout the entire Drew Brees era. But with Brees leaving at the end of last season, a tumultuous year with Jameis Winston getting hurt. I'll say this though. I mean, the Saints, if the Rams don't choke in the second half of Week 18 against the San Francisco 49ers, we're not talking about Jimmy Garoppolo somehow winning two playoff football games without throwing a touchdown. And we were talking about the Saints being a playoff team. So I have to admit that does catch me a little bit by surprise. Often you hear some scuttlebutt, this guy's thinking about that, but you're like, okay, wake me up when it's happening. That is pretty wild breaking news, and a big coaching vacancy, another big one in the NFL. And you have to wonder, I mean, you're just hitting me with this live on the program right now, but I mean, where does the Saints job line up amongst the most attractive jobs available right now in the NFL? I mean, you've got 8, now 9. We're still wondering what's going to happen with Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, we could be talking about 30% of the league having open coaching jobs. And I know the Broncos seem like they're down to their final 3 candidates, but usually at this point, with this many openings, you have some teams that are, jumping at it and getting it done. That really hasn't happened so far. And certainly, I guess it's a good time to be an out-of-work coach with the amount of open jobs right now in the National Football League.
Yeah, I guess Sean Payton realized that his quarterback was Taysom Hill, and he said, you know what, I've had enough. And I saw the other joke on Twitter, Huss, was Sean Payton realizing that Kevin James played him in a movie. I don't know if that's a burn or not, but there is a movie coming out. So, yeah, great career. I mean, him and Drew Brees, they were the ones part of the, I don't want to call it a dynasty. They did win 1 Super Bowl. They were very good for a long time, had some tough losses as well. But I do wonder who takes over. So number of vacancies there in the NFL as we head into championship weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. And T. Pauly giving some love to Zach Williams, who a local product, re-signing with the Stamps after getting some NFL looks. I mean, as far as the Bombers go, I mean, just to bring it back to the home team for a minute, we did speak about yesterday about Kyle Walters. Now that the D-line and the O-line seems to be the situation pretty clear. That was the priority. Now looking at the defensive secondary, Brandon Alexander, and of course the receiving core, starting with Kenny Lawler, who did get a couple looks, or at least one with the Atlanta Falcons. Not sure whether that will end up being turning into a contract, but you wonder whether he's willing to just commit to come back to the Canadian Football League, or still trying to see if he can get one of those NFL contracts. Wolodarski, Rasheed Bailey, Darvin Adams, that whole core of the receiving group of the, back-to-back championship teams, not signed yet. So I guess there's the potential for some more turnover at that position, but certainly considering what Kyle Walters has done so far, I would imagine they'll be making a big push to try to get some, if not all of those players back to Winnipeg for the upcoming season. All right, before we finish up, let's get to the Coolbet Lines. Don't forget to check out the Lock Shop if you haven't. All we've done is gone 17-3 against the spread in the playoffs so far. It certainly has been worth your time watching the Friday shows the last couple of weeks. Today, we went over some hockey picks. We made our picks for the Farmers Open in golf, and even a little tennis as we get down to the quarterfinals and semifinals. Tough loss for our boy Chapo last night, Remo. Drops the first two sets to the all-time legend Rafael Nadal, but battles back, wins the third, wins the fourth to send it to a fifth, but just wasn't able to do it. And Rafa Nadal now 2 wins away from a record 21st Grand Slam title. And wouldn't that be ironic if he got it done at the Aussie Open, where, of course, Novak Djokovic would have been a massive favorite to be the first guy to get to 21 Grand Slams.
Yeah, a couple things here. One, you stayed up for that one last night, that long match?
I didn't.
Oh.
I dropped out in the, I'll be honest, I was still feeling it from the entire weekend, but especially Sunday. I was up way too late Sunday. I couldn't go to sleep. I was just so wired from the end of the Chiefs-Bills game. So I tried to do maximum rest. I rested after the show. Then I got up. Then I started watching it and kind of fell asleep when it didn't look good for Chapo. And then, of course, woke up to find out that he'd storm back to take it to a 5th set. So we still do have one hope alive at the Australian Open. We'll find out how Felix Auger-Aliassime does tonight against Daniil Medvedev, the highest remaining seed. Felix is a huge underdog in this one. Plus 550 on the Coolbet line. But I'll tell you what, chip in a chair, and he's got it. So we'll see what he can do tonight in another one of the biggest games of his career. But I'll tell you what, both of those young men didn't go well on the women's side. Bianca wasn't there. Layla got bounced in the first round. But man, Shapovalov and Felix Auger-Aliassime, especially on hard courts, this tournament and the U.S. Open, had some great results over the last few seasons. It's very, as a huge tennis fan, the most exciting time in the history of Canadian tennis right now, with all of these stars contending in all of the majors. As far as tonight goes, there are 2 games. Jannik Sinner going up against Tsitsipas. And then, as we mentioned, Felix Auger-Aliassime, the final matchup, and Felix plus 550, a big underdog. On the women's side of things, 2 more semis. The Pole, Iga Swiatek, she's a heavy favorite over unseeded Kanepi. I do like her to win that game, and I think I'm actually going to take it on the spread. And then Collins versus Cornet. Cornet of France has had a nice run, but still paying more than 2-1 in the other women's quarterfinal. Ash Barty crushed Jessica Pegula. It's been a tough 24 hours for the Pegula family, with their Bills losing and then their daughter Pegula losing, although with a great tournament so far. Ash Barty, the top seed, the hometown woman from Australia, still the heavy favorite right now. She goes up against Madison Keys in the other semi. That'll be tomorrow evening. NHL tonight, busy day. Carolina's heavy favorite against the Vegas Golden Knights, who played last night, minus 217. Dallas is now up to a minus 135 favorite in New Jersey against the Devils. You got the Sens laying minus 175 at home against the Buffalo Sabres. Sabres, I believe, just beat the Sens last week, so we'll look to do it again. You don't often see lines this big. Pittsburgh minus 476 against the Arizona Coyotes. I think Dusty today on the Lock Shop took the Penguins to win by 3. And that's what you needed to bet to get it to a number where you'd be getting plus money. Plus 110 on minus 2.5. And that's actually gone down. Now it's only plus 105, probably after Nielsen made his bet on the Lock Shop. Dude, how about the Flyers? Like, they've lost a dozen straight games. They had a 10-game losing streak earlier in the season. It got Alain Vigneault fired, and now a straight-up dozen in a row of canceled games. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about Edmonton just because we hear about it a lot more, but that situation in Philly is almost inconceivable how bad they are this year.
Yeah, 2 10-game losing streaks. You fire the coach, you think it's going to work. And they have Mike Yeo. The interesting move they made today, Hustler, I don't know if you saw, but John Torchetti added as another assistant coach. And if you recall, it was Torchetti who replaced Mike Yeo as head coach in Minnesota. And yes, it is the same GM.
I forgot about
It is the same GM in Florida that was in Minnesota, and Chuck Fletcher. So Chuck Fletcher trying to rock Minnesota Wild 2.0, and I guess it ended with him in Philly. So
yeah, well, they're looking like Minnesota Wild in their expansion season. That's what they're looking like right now. Listen, they're going to have a different coach next year. They have said they're going to roll with these guys till the end of the season. But considering the 12-game losing streak right now, I wouldn't be placing any sprinkles at Coolbet on Mike Yeo to be this coach for the Flyers next year. Of course, the Jets, a plus 140 home underdog against the high-octane Panthers coming in tonight. Over-under on that game, 6.5. Panthers have been scoring a ton of goals. Nashville, minus 172. Road favorites in Seattle against the Kraken, who just beat those Panthers on their way to Winnipeg. And the final game of the night, can the Oilers win 2 in a row? There's a lot of steam coming in on Edmonton, to be honest. This line has moved heavily since last night. Oilers minus 147 favorites in Vancouver. Bruce Boudreau and the Canucks might be going, hey, give us a little bit of respect. We've been great for the better part of the last 6 weeks, and Edmonton hasn't done anything with the exception of that win over Calgary. But I think everyone just sort of expecting that the Oilers can't be as bad as they've been. They got that one win and expecting more to happen.
Yeah, I mean, haven't heard too much about McDavid and Draisaitl lately, but I mean, Huss, I looked at their lines, and like McDavid's, his line mates tonight are like, let me look it up because I was going to play them on DraftKings. Because I was just hammering them earlier in the year when he was playing with Hyman and Puljujarvi or Nugent Hopkins, whoever they were rotating. But it's like Connor McDavid. Okay, look at this line. This is their top line. Connor McDavid with Ryan McLeod and Kyler Yamamoto. Draisaitl with Warren Fogle and Jesse Puljujarvi. Like those lines don't scare you. I mean, you have one guy on
the guy
those
in
lines.
the middle scares you. Everybody
yes.
else, not so much. And listen, they don't have Zach Hyman in the lineup right now. So I mean, he's been out quite a while. I think on that COVID list. I mean, a lot of guys have been coming back right away. Obviously, he's been, you would presume, unfortunately, he's dealing with some symptoms and hasn't been able to get back into the lineup yet. They definitely need him. But we can talk about McDavid. We can talk about Draisaitl. We can talk about Nuge, who's back in, and he's got Cassian and Perlini on the side. If things don't go well, we'll probably see Nuge move up on one of the wings with one of those players. We'll see a bit more of a shakeup. But the big question is, will they be getting any saves? And Mikko Koskinen and Ilya Konovalov right now holding it down. Well, Stuart Skinner. Yeah, exactly. Ilya Konovalov and, of course, Mike Smith stays on the IR right now. So there you have it. There are the Coolbet lines. Check out the lock shop from today. Very fun show with my guy Dustin Nielsen. Check my Twitter or Dusty's Twitter for the video feed. And if you haven't already, just search Lock Shop on your favorite podcast feed and do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. The big show coming up is going to be on Friday, where we pick the 2 conference championship games. And we've been doing a confidence pool throughout it. I was 4-0 last week. Dusty was 3-1. Dusty was 9-0 against the spread heading into that final game. He had the Bills. I had the Chiefs. So it was a big swing game. I'm actually now 1 point up on him for our playoff long competition. But I'll tell you what, 8-2, 9-1. We'll both take it. It's been a lot of fun. If you haven't bet at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST. They'll give you a 100% deposit on your, or a bonus on your first deposit up to $200. Remo, before we go, what are you expecting tonight downtown? And I don't mean empty seats. I mean on the ice. This is a big game for the Jets. I think that if they can come out with a great performance and play well and win, this could be the sort of game where you springboard, because I think they probably felt that there was more that they could have grinded out of that. They had a couple OT or shootout losses. Those are unfortunate. It was a tough schedule. It was a lot of hockey, but I mean, there's no time for excuses right now. They got to get wins. And tell you what, a win against Florida, I think, would be right up there with the best teams in the league to beat if you want to start a little bit of a run.
I think they are catching Florida at the right time at the end of a road trip. Look at Dom's percentages. He gives Florida 60% chance, the Jets 40%. Florida coming in on a 4-6, the Jets on a 3-4. I'm expecting a lot of goals tonight, and the total would indicate that, as you said, 3.5. I think it's going to be 10. I think it's going to be more like the Pittsburgh performance than it was the Nashville performance. So let's go. Who sees? Mark in chat says 4-3 Jets. Ryan Friesen says 7-1 Jets. Panthers are a joke. Okay, Ryan, that's why.
Thanks, Frieser.
He's the chat troll. Let's see. Itchy and Scratchy says Jets are going to win tonight 4-2. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of goals. I don't see a 4-3 for someone. I'm not sure who, but your heart says wants it to be Jets, but that's going to be tough. I mean, home dogs, always value betting on home dogs. I think Randy says 5-3 Panthers. So there you go.
And Mark A in chat says it pays 3-1 now if you pick the Jets to make the playoffs. I mean, I've seen some different models that have the Jets as high as like 39.5% and as low as in the high 20s right now. So maybe now's a good time to get in on that playoff number. A lot of people were pretty confident, and you were laying money at the beginning of the season, and I think that made a lot of sense. People expected the Winnipeg Jets to be probably in a better spot that they are in. Good news is lots of hockey left to be played. But as we heard from Helly after the game, Remis, and I know he was hot about, turning a shutout into a 2-2 tie in a matter of 9 seconds. But he said it himself. This team needs to come in and play with a great sense of urgency tonight. And hey, you might win, you might lose. This is a great team that they're hosting tonight. They really do need a result more than anything. But playing with that sort of desperation and urgency, I think will do this team well, because I know we're into February and there's a lot of games we're good just about into February. There's a ton of games next month and still a lot of hockey left to be played, but it doesn't take a long look at the standings to realize that there is a lot of work to be done. And hey, you know what? If you lose on home ice to Arizona and to Buffalo, you got to make those up with maybe games where you're an underdog. Tonight would be a great night to do that in front of the 250 fans lucky enough to be in the building to see it.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to look. We will see. But yeah, they definitely need a win. I mean, we'll see if it happens. Hopefully they can continue to play the right way. The lines are forward lines, top 6. You're going to need a lot from both lines, not just one. The Dubois, Connor, Perfetti, and the Shafley, Cop, Wheeler. So hoping for the best here tonight, an entertaining night in front of the TV.
Elliot in chat wondering if Patrick Laine will score 20 this year. Well, I sure hope so. Let's just say I have a rather sizable future on Laine to do that. He's only got 6 goals so far, albeit in 20 games, but he's missed so many games that, but I think we all know Patrick Laine can get hot. He could double that in a week. So I'm holding out hope that Laine will in fact get to that 20 goal mark right now, but not a very good situation in Columbus as well as many of those other teams. And as we've said, Remo, I mean, if you're on the wrong side of the playoff line right now in the East, you're just about in next year territory.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you talk about Laine, we didn't really mention it's the 1-year anniversary of the Laine Dubois trade, Laine and Roslovic, and I think you can look back and see early things. I think would say, I mean, you miss Laine, but I mean, have Pierre-Luc Dubois is exactly what the team needed. His style of play, and I've said, you kind of have left-handed Laine and Kyle Connor, and he's really allowed him to take over as the team's number 1 scorer. And I mean, Dubois, a center, goes down the middle to the dirty areas, plays physical, plays hard. I mean, he's going to get a big contract next year. I thought he had an all-star level, season. Didn't make the team, but I don't think it's out of the question for him to be on there in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you just think, where would this team be this season without Pierre-Luc Dubois? I mean, it could be not a good spot. And right now, it certainly looks like he's the top guy on the top line right now, along with Kyle Connor and, of course, Cole Perfetti, who's getting a pretty nice spot to go in. Be good to get him, on the scoreboard maybe tonight. All hands on deck, though. Whoever, fourth line, third line, first, second, defense, all hands on deck for a huge game against the Florida Panthers tonight. And man, we've got some great hockey talk coming up over the next couple days, Remo. Why don't you just fill people in on what's coming up on tomorrow's show and Thursday as we know it right now?
Yeah, tomorrow, who's coming on? Steve Koulias from SiriusXM, Murat Atesh, and also Nelson Noje from the Manitoba Moose will be stopping by. Thursday show, Mike Kelly from NHL Network and Mike McIntyre from the Free Press talking Jets ahead of the game against Vancouver. And Friday, Ken Weeb, and I'll just have to confirm with Hacksaw. So
we're definitely having Hacksaw on going into. Frankly, I wish we almost had Hacksaw yesterday on just to talk about the games, but we'll let it percolate a little bit. Maybe I'll lean on Andy Mack. We kind of should get Andy McNamara on one more time before the end of the football season. So we'll focus in on a lot of hockey. It's a big week for the Winnipeg Jets with these 2 home games, and of course tomorrow we'll be react to tonight's game. But of course, don't forget to check out the IC guys and Kenny and Rennie who will get after it after tonight's action. Thanks again to James Patrick who joined us, to Jack Han, and of course the one and only Scooch himself, Joe Pascucci. Follow him on Twitter at Pascucci015, and all of our sponsors, including the great folks over at Culligan Water, Vita Health. Don't forget their fan appreciation, customer appreciation day, 10% off just about everything in the store on Friday. F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, might be a great place to check out the game tonight. The Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Canadian Club, and Coolbet Canada. And of course, thanks to Michael Remis for taking care of everything on the other side of things. Folks, enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully we'll be talking about a win tomorrow, but a great challenge for the Winnipeg Jets. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Florida Panthers bring to Canada Life Center tonight. Enjoy the game. Stay warm. Going to be +1 tomorrow. It'll be interesting. Remember what that's like? We'll get to that. And of course, the latest on the Winnipeg Jets, the National Hockey League, the NFL playoffs, and more right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Thanks for being with us.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.